Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fierce and Flowing podcast. I am Monique Renee, and I have another very, very special guest that I'm going to introduce you to, Ellenit Serrano, and we've been in each other's lives for a long time
Yep.
through many changes, right, for both of us. So let me go ahead and introduce Ellenit and let her know a little bit about you, let you know a little bit about her, rather. So Ellenit is an operations executive and leadership and well-being advisor. So those of you who know me well, you can already know why we jive. We're in the same world, and we both have a very similar mission, which I love. So Ellenit's career trajectory underscores her profound expertise in strategy and operations, showcased through her leadership at Fortune 100 companies, including MasterCard and American Express. And most recently, she became the founder and chief impact officer at Essencia Solutions, which is a business and well-being advisory firm dedicated to elevating individual and organizational performance. Her emphasis on operational excellence and human-centered authenticity, coupled with her diverse certifications in happiness and well-being, yoga, and meditation, highlights her commitment to fostering holistic success. And by integrating these elements into her leadership style, services, and program offerings, Ellenit essentially uplifts individual happiness, cultivates healthier workplaces, and drives tangible bottom line results. So, Ellenit, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm amazed at how you were able to get all of that into one paragraph, knowing your background and
Yes.
everything that you've been up to
Yeah.
for
Me
so
too.
long. Yes.
Me too. It's definitely taken a while, and I love to kind of hear it play back and have my mind think through, is it picking up all of the things that I wanted to do? But
Yeah.
I know simplicity is important. And so hopefully it does.
It does. And I think you speak to something too, and maybe you can let me know if you agree. I find that being on this spiritual journey, that and being go-getters at the same time, right? Because you've always been a high achieving executive woman, very entrepreneurial, and always so connected with your desires, with your purpose. But I find that the longer we're on that journey and really dedicated to our spirituality, to our practices, to connecting with our consciousness, with our higher selves, we're okay with making things more simple, right?
Mhm.
In other
Yep.
words, there's almost like a release of the ego
Yes.
where, I don't have to tell you everything I've done all my life.
My God, yes. So many people who know me today are so surprised when I hear kind of what my career has been about and the things I've done. And it's been quite the journey. And I'm grateful for all of it
Yeah.
and grateful for where I am.
Yeah, I love that. I remember because we've consulted together so many times that you're one of those individuals, and we'll talk about your fierce moment in a minute, who, again, this deep purpose, this deep vision for where you wanted to go in your life. But I always remember that you always said to me, I love everything that I do. I'm not one of these people that just wants to throw away,
Mhm.
my entire history, my corporate success. I want to be able to really find that balance and do it in a way that's authentic.
Yep.
So with that, let's go ahead and ask the question that I always ask at the beginning, which is, if you could share with us a moment in your life that you felt you really had to be fierce, right? And we can define fierceness in so many ways, but with many of the women and executives that I speak to, it's usually a moment in their lives where they're like, I can't wait any longer to do this. And if that means that I have to close doors, I have to show up in a different way that people are not used to, I have to remove all those masks that I have to wear and do something hard and risky, you know, it's now is the time. So what moment do you want to share with us?
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm,
Um, it's brought up so much emotion just kind of thinking through this
mhm,
in preparation for this conversation. And because, as I mentioned in the pre-work, because the questions come up a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and I know that's no coincidence, right?
Nope.
I know the power of stories and
Yeah.
how impactful they can be. And so while I'll get to the moment, but while I had been for many years considering what I ultimately wanted to do, probably in the last part of my working life, let's
Yeah.
say, as I went deeper into my purpose, I didn't think I was necessarily ready to make a move, but I had that fierce moment and realization about a year and a half ago. I think it was November of 2022, where I had, I was working in my last role at an employer I had been for over 10 years, and I was coming off of a really nice high in a role that I really, really enjoyed. And a lot of things had changed. There was, as you know, in business,
Yep.
things change all the time, priorities changed, and the focus that I had in my role shifted. And at the same time, there was an organizational leadership change that was looking at how the group was organized and what the
Mhm.
future was looking like. And while I was really trying really hard to find my new meaning and purpose within all that change in the role that I had, it was like putting a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
I tried, you know how I am, right? I tried
Yes.
several times to kind of present information and dive into projects and say, this is how I can make an impact. And it just wasn't working. And I realized this isn't going to work. This is the moment.
Right.
This moment. And it took a lot of courage to actually say, I need to move forward in a different
Right.
direction. Um, but I felt, and you were alluding to, a little bit to this before, I felt a peace with that
Mm.
decision. I had struggled for about 6 to 9 months. I was, not enjoying what I was doing. I was actually having to do a lot of stuff that was not favorable in terms of de-scoping the business that I was working in and so forth. And as I said, hadn't found my purpose, and I had lost my sense of belonging in the
Yeah.
organization. And as we know, your sense of belonging and your purpose are two of the most important things
Yes.
in your, overall happiness and well-being, right? So reflecting back on that now, I realize that I did have my own moment of being stuck in the fight, right? In the
Yeah.
struggle of who I knew and the success that I'd had,
Yes.
and thinking I was not ready to let that go. I
Hmm.
still wanted a few more years. I had a few more years in me, right? By the way, I still haven't let that go. I am just very conscious about
Yeah.
the decisions and choices that I make.
Right.
So, in the opportunities that present themselves, I'm very clear about what I may want to do and not. But one thing I do know is that I have a path forward with Essencia Solutions, regardless of anything
Yes.
that may be.
Exactly.
So that was that moment. And the first thing that I did was go to my husband and tell him, this is happening. Because, this obviously is, it's a big impact to not
Yes.
me, but to the family and the community. And I needed him. I didn't want him. I needed him
Yeah.
to be okay and to be supportive
Yeah.
and understanding. And he was. I mean, he challenged me a bit to try to, do more to stay. And I spent about 6 months kind of, talking about the transition and really making that happen. But in the end, um, it did happen. And I left the corporate world. It's been about a year now. Um, and it's been,
Congratulations.
thank
Because I
you.
know how difficult it is. I and so many individuals who actually listen to this podcast, have and many of the guests that I've had have gone through similar um, experiences, including myself. When I
Yeah,
left,
I
I say the
remember.
corporate world, I say corporate because I worked with so many corporations as part of
Mhm.
my role in education, but really my role was in education um for gosh 17 years, and it's really hard to redefine what success means, and so I'm not surprised that that's still something that is there, right?
Yes.
And I think part of allowing ourselves a major transition, a fierce moment, is giving ourselves grace, right?
Mhm.
And part of that grace is recognizing that we don't just lose it all from one day to the next. We don't become a completely different person from one day to the next. It's really a journey. And that journey could be years before
Yes.
we're able to really fully release it and feel 100% comfortable in our new role. Um, so how are you learning how, or have you already started to redefine what success means for you today?
I definitely am in the process. I think finally, 12 months later, I have clarity, more
Mm,
clarity, which is why I was able to give you kind of a
yeah,
holistic view of
yeah,
what that vision looks like. But I had to allow myself, to your point, I had to allow myself to take a step back. And
yeah,
it's very interesting because since I was feeling so lost and I had lost that sense of community, which was so strong for me in my career, by the way, that's what kept me
yeah,
going as long as it did. It was a strong sense of community as well as meaning and purpose and so forth. Since I had lost those things, I dove into, well, I'm going to be a part of a new community and I'm going to follow my passions and I'm going to network and I'm going to meet people. And along the way, I will figure out
right.
what I'm going to do with this passion that I have, right?
Yeah,
And how I'm going to apply it. How am I going to commercialize it, right? Because at the
yes,
end of the day, defining success does include a financial impact.
yeah,
So I had to actually allow myself to take a step back and not be at the computer every day in the morning thinking I had to do something. And it was really interesting because in my networking, I met a couple of kindred souls who were going through the same journey.
wow,
And they had the same experience, right? We're so
yeah,
programmed
yes,
to do, some of us more than others. And I had to be okay with letting go. I've been working since I was 14 years old.
wow, yes,
So this was new for me. And I had to be okay with just allowing and
yeah,
feeling my way into what was right and allowing myself to then experience how I might potentially bring that to the world. So yeah, it's been an incredible year of meeting people, of volunteering and joining communities that
yes,
are in the workplace well-being space and
right.
in the happiness space and meeting a lot of different people that bring their gifts, right, in different ways of service to
Yeah,
the world.
that's
And
amazing.
still, yeah.
Yeah, go complete your
No,
thought. Yeah,
and still, the
absolutely.
only thing I was going to say, and still, which is a very important piece for me, staying connected intellectually to
Yes.
people in groups that kept me challenged that way. Because as you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, because you were there, I'm used to working on really big things, right?
Yes,
And while I love one-on-one coaching, I also really like to get, into really meaty stuff. So
absolutely.
yeah, that was important for me.
Yeah, and I always love to bring in astrology, and we'll go there, but just to touch on it, you have your sun and Mars and Mercury in Capricorn, okay? And
Yeah.
that is the ultimate worker bee, like corporate, right? If I can define a sign that equals someone whose mission is to work in the corporate space, to be resourceful, to bring in money, and have those types of relationships, like that's you. And it's in your third house of community, of communication and sharing with others, and so it's so purposeful. But at the same time, your moon is in Libra, and
Mhm.
that's where the harmony and the
Yep.
peace and that other aspect of purpose really comes into play, and connection with people. Libra rules the seventh house of relationships, and so if those close relationships are no longer there, that community is no longer there, it's going to be very difficult for you to be happy, right? Going with this theme of happiness, and you have alluded to so many different components that create this concept, this feeling of being in flow in
Yes.
life, right?
Yes.
And happiness is one of those, being able to really connect with what lights us up, right?
Yep.
And being around others who are similar and have that ability to light us up as well, right? So lighting ourselves up from within, but also being around others that can energize us and motivate us, knowing our purpose,
Mhm.
knowing, what we need, what we desire, what where our magic is.
Yeah.
And so when we don't have those things, we can feel like we're out of flow. And it's very difficult to tap into happiness, to tap into a sense of purpose. So I'd love to, since we're talking about happiness, and I did download the global happiness, report that just came
Yes.
out, but you had the exciting opportunity to be a part of that effort and travel to the summit and and I just have to say that's one of the reasons why she's wearing pink, because she was emerged into this space of color and light and joy, and she still is not off that high. So I would love to hear from you, like what were the big themes that were discussed, and what did you get out of being a part of it, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah. Thank you. It was amazing. So I was the World Happiness Summit, which
Yep.
is an event that is put together by WOHASU. And WOHASU is a platform for elevating happiness across the world, founded by Karen Guggenheim. And I came across that in part of my search in the last year and diving deep into my passions. And I wanted a community,
Yeah.
and so I found Wohasu, and I enrolled myself into their certification in happiness and the elements of well-being. And then I found out they were having a summit. And I said, well, I need to do this. I think, I usually go on yoga retreats at least once a year. That's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
That's the time and space I give myself. And this was my trade-off this year. I said, this is what I'm giving myself. And it was just amazing. First of all, the speakers, and the content was incredible. We had the keynote was Arthur Brooks, who's an author and professor at Harvard. The books From Strength to Strength,
Yeah.
and I, who he is, right? So he was the opening keynote. It was amazing. And then we had the U.S. Surgeon General also.
Awesome.
Um, Presented. So it was just incredible. First and foremost, for me, the energy of being in that environment, I had so much opportunity to do that in my career up
Yes.
until COVID, and then budgets were cut, right? But
Yeah.
I had so much opportunity to be engaged in energizing forums and learning. I'm a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I was buzzing. I couldn't even go to sleep. There was about 700 people. I also had the opportunity to be a coach facilitator at the event. And there's a group of about 40 or 50 of us that did that. And there's now a community of people I didn't even get to meet
Yeah.
all the people. It was impossible. It was so much information I was taking in. But what was wonderful was that you had people that were approaching, the content was a lot of facts, right, behind the
Mhm.
science of happiness that you
Yeah.
can use and provide context, either for yourselves or to take it to other individuals. We had the Oxford Center, Oxford Research Center, Oxford University Research Center, which puts out all of the information on happiness and well-being, represented Yale, Harvard, as I said. And so tons of information that could be used. Plus, for me, it was the approach that people took to how they delivered their message
Mm.
that I took away. And so as I think through how
Right.
I'm bringing this to life,
Yeah.
it really helped me envision how I would start talking about it, how I would create program around it. So for me, when I engage in these things, because I'm an extrovert, I get more energized.
Yes.
I create. That's what happens. So it was amazing. Some of the themes were unfortunately not really nice for the US. So the US statistically in terms of happiness rating in the world
Right.
dropped off the top 20 for the first time
Wow. Wow.
since the report has been measured since I think 2012. And there was a significant drop in individuals under the age of 30
Wow.
and their level of unhappiness.
Very concerning. Yeah.
Very concerning. And a lot of it was a call out to connection in
Yes.
life, the loneliness epidemic that we all
Yeah.
know that we're having, and even the belief for many of the younger individuals that digital connection is equal to connection in real life, and some of the things that some of us in the older generations have been used to.
Yeah.
Um, and in particular, not just Gen Z, but the impact on really young kids and
Yes.
the impact social media has had on them and continues to have on them. And what's that going to look like when they then become the next generation of adults? So there was a lot of emphasis on youth.
Yeah.
Um, and another cool thing that I found in the report, which I assume you're going to hone in on as well for the work that you do, is now there's a view, a generational view
Right.
of generations stack up in terms
Wow.
of happiness. And so what applications are required and are needed, right,
Yeah.
for Z versus baby boomers or millennials are
Right.
completely different. And
Yeah.
so you can get very targeted at how, because what needs to happen is that we all need to act, right?
Exactly.
We can talk about happiness all we want, but at the end of the day, you need to assess and you need to act and execute. And so you can be very targeted and tailored to how you work to increase levels of
Happiness.
happiness.
Yeah. And really help to, gosh, curb a lot of these new habits that are associated with declining happiness. And
Yes.
I think that that's one of the scariest things is, we know we can create change. We look at what happened with COVID and how, whether or not you believe in the immunization
Hmm.
for COVID, it has nothing to do with it. For me, it has to do with how quickly the US was able to buckle down and get an immunization ready to deal with COVID. Are we willing to do the same?
Right.
Right? With money, with time, with speed to help our generation under 30, because those are the future leaders,
Yeah.
right? And they are suffering, they are feeling the loneliness. And the more we give them tools that are digital and don't provide them with solutions on how to deal with it and how to connect, actually
Yes.
teach them how to
Yes.
connect, right?
Yes.
We're headed for disaster, and it's very sad. It's very sad to see it.
And there was a
Um,
call to action from the US Surgeon General, actually. He actually called it out as
good.
this needs to be top priority.
Yeah,
And it is, as you said, leaders,
yeah,
government,
yeah.
right? So how we measure, right, the health of our nations, right? It's not just GDP.
No,
So how are your people doing? If you
right.
can't, if you do not have the well-being of your people in mind,
Yeah.
I think you're missing, right? You're missing it completely.
Absolutely. I think one of my favorite, research projects, which I'm sure you know about, and many who have been able to see the Netflix on it, or read the book, which came out way before, is the Blue Zones.
Oh yeah.
There's so much science and research out there, that really gives us clues not only into happiness, but how to feel well,
Yes.
in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits. And I think one of the things that we see across the board is connection, you know,
Absolutely.
and so that, if we can just chunk it down and work on these things a little bit at a time, we can make a significant,
Yeah.
improvement here in our country.
Yeah.
And so that's exciting. I'm really excited for you that you were able to do that, that it's now given you like a new mission in your new business, So that is wonderful. I want to go back to kind of corporate, right? Because I think corporations need to really pay attention to all of this because they can make the biggest impact. And let me say both corporations and schools. I'm
Yep,
still dumbfounded that today there are not more elementary, middle, high schools with mindfulness programs for our
absolutely.
children. I mean, there's so much research and it's so easy to
Right.
teach and to help our children practice mindfulness. But with corporations, if it starts at the top, it can really, make a huge impact on the way that our employees feel. And then what those employees bring home and how they are feeling at home and treating their spouse and their children. It can just have an incredibly positive trickle effect.
Yes.
With so much of your experience in the corporate world, especially with top 100 organizations, I'm wondering how you've seen the trajectory of the evolution of health and wellness, whether it's mindfulness, yoga, happiness, a piece of it or all of it. Have you seen a change? And do you see that it's kind of leaning forward towards where we need to go?
Yeah, I've seen a change, and I want to say that I want to believe I've been a part of the change. So I
Yep.
did, um, probably 5 or 6 years ago, begin to bring a lot of this thinking into my world when I
Yep.
was at MasterCard, and I was able to implement um, not just yoga and work with others to bring in meditation and mindfulness, but to really start to engage with teams and so forth to talk about holistic well-being.
Yep.
And I think that's the shift. I think organizations are definitely embracing. There's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of data right
Yep.
now to support the need. And there's top line. Let's say there's top leadership kind of conversation and prioritization around it. I think where we're missing the opportunity is in the cascading
Yeah.
of that um priority all the way down to the
Yeah.
organization and holding leadership accountability, right?
Yeah.
For that. And that's where authentic leadership comes in,
Yes.
and accountability. So, it has to flow all the way through. And it has to be a holistic view. So
Yeah.
we know that happier individuals who can connect their purpose and meaning to work are more engaged, and that's better for the organization as a whole. It decreases costs, it increases
Yep.
productivity, and
Absolutely.
there's facts to support that. But
Yep.
you can't make that happen. And I've been one to teach yoga in at the organization. You can't make that happen just by offering yoga classes
No.
or by giving access to a meditation app. Those things help, and
Yes.
they might help a few.
Right.
It needs to be a comprehensive approach that everybody buys into.
Yeah.
And it needs to be based on the specific needs of the organization.
Yeah.
As we know, everything that we need to be happy, we already have, whether it's an individual,
Yeah.
right? Or as an authentic organization, right? You can create it from what you have. So you have to take a look at where you're at
Right.
as an individual. Where am I across all of the elements of my life that you mentioned, right? Physical and mental health, social connections, my community, my mindfulness, right?
Hmm.
My spiritual connection and my purpose. Where do I stand?
Right.
How do I rate myself from a happiness and well-being perspective? And then how does that collectively come out in a team environment, right?
Yeah.
And then where do I want to be? Um, what do I think happiness looks like for me? And I say think because what I've learned is that happiness is a practice.
It is.
And it is a practice that begins with awareness and assessment, right? And a vision of where you want to go. And then it requires action
Yeah.
and experience, commitment to get there,
Commitment. Commitment is
commitment
huge. Yeah.
to get there. And by the way, it includes unhappiness. So this idea that
Yeah.
I want to be happy because I'm unhappy, right? You can't get to the light without the darkness, as we
Yeah.
know. And so
Mhm.
we need unhappiness in our life so that we can have resilience, so that we can have growth, so that we can have learning, and we can get to that next incremental
Yeah.
step along our journey. We can flow through our journey, right? We
Yes.
can flow through the journey because at the end of the day, that's the goal,
Yeah.
getting incrementally happier. The goal is not nirvana. The
No,
goal is knowing where you are and working on that next level. That's
absolutely. I think
important.
to me that really is nirvana. I find that, well, first of all, we we know that we are in a fierce moment in our life because of the dark.
Yes.
We're experiencing the dark, which sheds light on what's not working well. And we begin to ask the question why and to understand the causation
Yes.
behind what's not working well. And many times it's something that we are either doing or not doing in addition to others in our lives, right? Sometimes it's just us, sometimes it's a combination of what am I doing and then how are others contributing to it and where's my role in changing it. But the darkness, the tower moments, the difficulty is what leads us to to these fierce moments. And then there's the commitment. I remember in the prep for this podcast today, you mentioned something about yoga, how it doing it every now and then is great, but it's really in doing it every single day that it changes your
Yep.
life, right? And you can substitute yoga for breathing,
Yep.
for going on a walk in nature, whatever it is for you. Where is the commitment to it? I can tell you now, and I've often shared in the podcast, that over the last few years, and I think especially when I left, my day-to-day job to become an entrepreneur, um, I had to create that rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that structure around what supported me, I can't live without it. I can't, I can go a day, maybe a day or two without my yoga and my breath work and my walking, but um, but that's about it. Because
Yep.
then we start to see, the declination, so to speak, of well-being, of happiness, of awareness and mindfulness and all of those things. So yeah, and my experience, Ellenit, too, because I've been doing, you and I have been doing this work for so long and in our own ways, trying to be a bright spot within a big organization. I know you feel that way. And I know that individuals matter, right?
Mhm.
One person bringing in something and starting to make the change and being the light you wish to see in others helps to make some changes, but only to a certain level in a big organization, right? You can have one or two departments that are vibing, that are really making incredible changes, that are happy more often, that feel vibrant and healthy. But in order for tremendous change to be made in an organization, it really does need to start, at the top, with that accountability, with the measurements, with the cascading, as you said. Would you agree that that's absolutely necessary?
Absolutely. The measurement, I think, is important. I think because there is science behind it, I think when you look at a business scorecard and you
Yes.
look at employee measures, I mean, I remember this from way back when I started my career, right? Business
Yep.
scorecard has shareholder, customer, and employee,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And the employee metrics were always the soft ones.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be, right?
No,
But it has to be a business priority,
it
right?
does.
And,
With
employee happiness
with budget attached to
with
it.
budget. So we talked about me being able to, and I'm very grateful that I was able to do a lot of what I did at MasterCard. But
Yeah.
once I got to money behind getting this done, very, very few leaders, I would say, were there from a mindset perspective. And then even the ones that were there would struggle with getting the right budget to
Yeah.
make this happen. And I think that's where those of us that are really wanting to make a big impact are still struggling, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where data and science helps, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you can convince CFOs and those that don't believe, right, that this needs to be at the top of the list and not one of those immediate deprioritized items, then you can get those other ones that are the ones that are more likely to
Yeah.
bring you in to help. And that is still the challenge that most of us face. But I do believe that we are at a turning point, because, as we've said, governments are, needing are actually focusing and, recognizing the need to continue to focus, right, on well-being and happiness for the individuals. Schools, with what we just discussed, incredibly necessary.
Yes.
There were teachers, by the way, as well as coaches
Yes.
summit, and it was huge topic. And then we talk about, let's not forget the role of the parents, right? Well,
Yes.
when you're working with individuals or you're working with organizations, you're touching the parents, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the ripple effects come in, because it starts with you.
Yeah.
But once you begin to change, once your energy shifts, because we talk about energy,
Yeah.
everybody's energy shifts, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it's a little bit, they can't help it.
Yeah.
It's contagious.
It is contagious. And I have to say that that's one of the areas where I'm most proud as a mom. Now my children are older, 25 and 19,
Yeah,
but I could have conversations with them about consciousness and energy, and they see it in themselves, and they ask for support from that perspective. My
mhm,
energy's low, what can I do, mom?
mhm.
Or, it's just amazing to me when you're able to bring it home, how they pay attention.
Yeah,
They make those connections for themselves. You don't have to spoon feed it. Just again, bring it into the awareness. I've seen some companies change, and they're more the visible ones of today, like Thrive, where if the CEO has an
yes,
experience
yes,
of dramatic health declination, um, they will make that change. It's fortunate and unfortunate that sometimes we need the leaders to experience hardship in wellness and health in order to prioritize it for their organizations. But this
absolutely.
is where you and I both know and are passionate about leadership, that those of us, and those of you listening who are in leadership or working to be in leadership, that you have the power to make the change, right?
Absolutely.
Bring that priority with you as you evolve in your organization. And because that's where it starts and that's where it can be lasting.
And we're
Um,
all leaders,
we're
right?
all
Even
leaders.
if you don't have people that directly report to you at work, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You're collaborating and you're influencing others. And that's leadership. And you're leading in your communities, in your homes.
Yeah.
You're a leader regardless. So when I say leader, and I know you mean the same thing, it's an individual perspective, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the more span of control that you have, the more opportunity you have to
Right.
make an impact. And I
Yes.
like to think about it that way, because to me, that's what leadership is about, right?
Absolutely.
Helping others, helping
Yeah.
others.
And so with that in mind, let me say decision makers, right? Like the decision makers in organizations, um, they have the power
Yeah.
to force the budgets, to force the conversation,
Yes.
and um, and so that's where I'm hoping to see more of a shift, in the next few years. And but you're right, bringing the data, individuals like you and I, when we do go into corporate spaces and do trainings and do coaching, that we're bringing that data and science with us so that we can really,
Yeah.
open people's eyes and
Yeah.
help to influence that change. Um, I want to go back to, because there's so many individuals who are on that precipice, have been on that precipice. Both you and I alluded to in our journeys. I knew that I wanted to make a change 10 years ago, but it didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay. Like there's no right or wrong. Again, this journey it is a journey. It's not the destination, so to speak. It's what we learn along the way. And when we know that we're ready. You talked about in those moments how you made it better for yourself. I think this is one of the areas that a lot of people have difficulty with. In other words, I can't leave my job. I know
Mm-hmm.
I have a greater purpose. I'm kind of stuck and I don't know how to find happiness today in my job. What would be some advice that you could give those individuals who can't make the shift right now
Right.
that could help them to stay engaged, stay healthy and happy in their job while they still pursue their dream?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I stayed for a long time thinking I didn't want to stay. And then I shifted into, wow, I'm having fun
Yeah.
again. And, it's a roller coaster. So I can totally relate to that. Um, I think, I think it's really important to try to see how your passions and purpose align with the work that you do or with the organization's mission and purpose. And maybe your leader can help you do that if you're in a large organization, right? But that's one way to kind of look at, well, if these are the things that are important to me, how can I bring more of that to the work that I do every day? And how does that ultimately help, right? When everybody comes together for the mission of the organization. So that's one way to link things. But
Yep.
let's say you're doing a job that you feel is completely not aligned with what's in your heart and what really drives you. Is there a little bit of time that you can dedicate to something that lights you up, to use
Yeah.
your words? Because that's how I started. And you mentioned yoga, and it's really funny for me because yoga was the one thing that I did, taking a yoga class, that changed my entire life from being a CFO to where I am now. And so that's a whole conversation. And we could do a
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
But I found moments of flow
Yeah.
in my practice. I found moments of peace, and in the space that I created, I had moments of clarity that started bridging and connecting the dots for me around how I could make my work environment happier for myself, right? And I
Yes.
started to do more things that were more aligned with the whole me, not just the me that I had kind of created or others created for me,
Right.
a job description and so forth, but me in that role. How do I do that role?
Yeah.
What are the things that I bring in? What groups? I was in a large organization, so what groups can I participate in that fuel my passions and give me energy? Because when you follow your passion and your energy, you will find your purpose.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Hmm.
are there 15, 20 minutes that you can give yourself and start that way? What you and I both know is that energy flows where intention goes. So
Yes.
so when you start giving yourself 15 to 20 minutes in those spaces will grow,
Right.
right? You don't know how. Like we just said, in my journey, started with a yoga class, became a yoga instructor, started learning mindfulness,
Yep.
about philosophy of yoga and leadership, got into well-being and happiness, and here I am. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how does that, I never in my wildest dreams did I
Right.
think that was the journey.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
started with practicing yoga to get
Yeah.
myself
It's amazing.
grounded.
And I think that part of this, thank you for sharing that. I think those are wonderful tips that I completely agree with. And I think a couple things that are important, based on that is the first is we have to listen to the conversations we're telling ourselves, right? Like, oh, there's no way I'm going to be happy. There's no
Yeah.
way they're going to let me do things that bring me joy, right? So
Yep.
we have to examine what we're saying to ourselves because to your point, the solution can be having a conversation with your superior in the
Yeah.
organization and asking, hey, is there any way that I could um add this to my list of responsibilities?
Yeah.
I'll find time for it, but it's something that's going to bring me joy, right? So
Exactly.
having the courage to talk to leadership about it,
Yep.
is one, and challenging our belief system,
Mhm.
right? And stop telling ourselves the things that are actually going to continue to make us unhappy and
Yep.
continue to make us feel stuck. So I know that in my coaching of a lot of individuals who have been in that position, they don't feel they have any control at all,
Yeah.
right? And if we believe we have no control at all, then we're never going to be able to find happiness where we are until we can get to
Yes.
where we want to
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah.
And so for you, I know this fierce moment had a lot to do with the realization that where you were and how the organization was changing, you really were not going to be able to find those moments of connection and fun that were
Yep.
so important to you. And that was enough to make you say, now's the time.
Yeah, and I didn't have meaning. I mean, I really could not find, going back to your point, my sense of meaning. And
Yeah,
so when people would say to me, wow, this is a great company, you can find another role, I'd be like, I actually don't find meaning here. It's not because it's bad. And it's not
right.
because, by the way, people did bad things to me or I did bad things. I mean, trust me, I've gone down that route as well. At the end of the day, it was a self-assessment.
Yeah,
I no longer had meaning, found meaning and joy in what I was doing. I didn't feel engaged, right?
yeah,
I didn't feel part of a community. Those things are highly important for me.
yeah.
So I knew it was time to move on. And it does take courage, right? That took courage, but even, over a decade ago, when going back to showing up as your whole self, right?
Yes.
Knowing your truth and showing up as your whole self. And I think I did in my pre-work, I just had a really big birthday, and that was one of my go-tos, like truth is the path forward. When you show up authentically,
Yeah,
people will follow.
yeah,
Don't be scared to be your authentic self, because your authentic self down at the core is good.
yeah,
It's all good. Everything else is a manifestation, right? But when you connect to your essence,
yeah.
that is, people are gonna follow, people will allow, people will search for you, right?
Absolutely.
They will be
Absolutely.
attracted to you, they will connect. And I have found that, and and as we said, I'm still in the evolution of this next chapter of
Yeah,
my career. And as we know, it's a journey.
yeah, it is.
Uh, but I'm confident that these things are fact, right?
Yeah.
And if we stay honest to our essence, follow our truth, show up as ourselves, and do all the things that we all know we need to do, to be happy and be a good person, um, goodness will follow, again, with challenges, because we are living in this world.
We're never not going to have them,
This
right?
is life. We will
And
have challenges.
and that nirvana is really about every time I have a new challenge or I experience darkness, am I able to get out of it quicker because
Yes,
I know how to work on it? Um, am I able to feel okay even though I'm going through something tough? And do I have community, right? You talked about community, and I think this is one of the most crucial times in 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 someone's life when they are making such a huge transition in their career, that they don't fall into the trap of being secluded and alone,
right.
right? But seek out the energy of those that you wish to, be
Yes,
with.
yes,
And they also help to hold you accountable too.
absolutely.
So, right. And like you did, you're going to find others who are on that same journey with you. And
Hmm.
the worst thing is to feel alone in that journey, right? So to those of you who are at that precipice in your life of making a fierce decision, make sure that you do find community, even if it's one person.
Absolutely.
Again, community means different things to different people, and some of us are very extroverted, like Ellenit and I. And some of us, like in strengths terminology, are more relators, where, hey, I just need a couple people in my life that get me,
Right.
that
Yep.
vibe at the same energy level as me, and I'm good.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, I can go on, but
I know.
we're at the hour, so I'm gonna ask you the one question. Actually, I'm gonna ask you one question and then a final question. A big part of the work that I do, when I think of my core mission, it's it's really to help people self-actualize, to really just understand who they are so that they know how to drive their lives forward through happiness, through authenticity, through meaning and purpose. But it's really to create and design sacred lives.
Yes.
Um, How do you define sacred, and how have you built a sacred life for yourself, Ellenit?
Wow. So through my journey and my when spirituality entered my journey, I would say, because
Yes,
I didn't
yes.
consider myself a spiritual person before. I really started to value moments of connection with divine energy and moments of flow.
Yeah.
So for me, I define sacred as those moments, right? Moments of connection to
Mhm.
spirituality, whether it's a walk, I live by the beach, I walk over to the beach. That's sacred to me. That's one of the
Mm.
reasons I live here. Movement is sacred to me. So like, I think you talked about your non-negotiables,
Yeah,
my sacred things, right?
yeah,
Like it is non-negotiable that I need time to meditate. I'm not going to dictate how much time, but
right.
I'm going to wake up and I'm going to pause before I start the craziness of the day. I'm going to enjoy nature. I enjoy movement many times through yoga. So I will practice yoga many times a week. Those things are sacred for me on an individual basis. And then
Yeah,
obviously my family and relationships with them are sacred to me.
yeah.
I'm going to go through probably all of the well-being aspects, right?
Right,
So,
right. The
right.
dimensions of
So
well-being. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so my family and supporting and engaging relationships with my friends, right?
So
Those
it
things
sounds like making conscious time with those things or with those people are what help you to feel that you're in flow and living a sacred life.
absolutely. In the WOHASU certificate, the framework
Yeah.
is awareness,
Mm-hmm.
connection, and experience
Mm-hmm.
across all the aspects of your life.
Okay.
I think that's very aligned with what you just said, which is like be in the moment.
Yeah.
Do the moments that make you feel good, that give you those aha. They may be fleeting moments of happiness, but they
Yeah.
are happy moments.
Yes.
And those are sacred because they
They
kind of keep
are.
you going. And then be with the people, right, that help you experience those sacred moments and do the things that feel good. And they could be work related, right? But they find, you know, that they're
Yeah.
purposeful for you and they feel those things feel sacred to me. When I'm teaching yoga or when I'm having conversations like this, I feel in flow,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel
Absolutely.
like I'm connected
Yeah.
and it's easy.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast, because I just
I know
love
it's great.
it.
It's
I,
great.
I really try as a, entrepreneur, small business owner, to remind myself of what are those aspects of my business
Yes.
that bring me so much joy. And if I can do that every day in some capacity, I'm
Yep.
I'm happy. I just am really happy, and I'm in flow. Thank you for sharing that. So last question I'm asking everybody. Obviously, we had a big astrological event kind of
Oh,
take place this year, which is, Pluto entering Aquarius, and then, minus a few months where it's going to go back into Capricorn. Starting in 2025, it's going to be there for, 20 years. And the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius was over 240 years ago. So in the astrologer's world, it's kind of a big deal, especially when we recognize that Aquarius is all about change and
mhm.
revolution and community and society, and Pluto is about transformation, right? And those awakenings that we have to go through in our lives. When we bring those two together, it's like, wow, what how is this going to affect each of us? Right? I'm looking at your chart, and this is happening for you in your fourth house of home.
Mm,
And a little bit it will go into towards I would say 15, 20 years of this transition. It'll be in your fifth house of personal expression or and
wow.
love. But for you, it's in home. And that's kind of like what home feels like, how you define home, how you bring change and revolution to your experience of home. So um, knowing that, but also in general, I'm asking everybody, what do you think over the next 20 years?
Wow.
And that, of course, can change. but what is your intuition kind of guiding you to say that this is the personal revolution that I am on the journey
Yeah.
of?
I think it started last year, and it was a long time coming. And it really was about leaving behind how I defined
Yes.
foundation,
Gotcha.
my home, not necessarily where I live,
Right.
but how I live my life,
Yep.
how I make money, how I present myself to the world.
Yep.
And this was a year of transition and transformation and getting comfortable with saying, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is who I am going forward.
This is your
And
new identity.
this is my new identity. And I bring with me everything. And I'm so
Yes.
grateful for all of the experiences that I had. And now I bring that with me and I create what's next. And Essencia Solutions is a part of that. And I expect to do amazing and fun things with that. I'm also starting the Happy Her project.
Okay.
More to come on that soon. But yes, community for women so that we can be more intentional
Okay.
about elevating happiness. So my mind is going. So one of the bad things about me, having been in the corporate world for a long time, is my ideas are like this big. I feel
Yeah.
like I think as though I have a team to execute. And so I've got to temper myself and pace myself.
Yeah,
To bring
grace,
it forward.
grace and simplicity, one moment, one
Exactly.
step at a time. But how exciting to be in a space where you have so many ideas,
Yeah.
so much creativity and inspiration kind of driving you. You are totally like we can talk more about your chart, but
I
this eclipse for you, girl, is yeah, it's bringing in this new change for you in every way, shape, and form. Your identity, your career, your relationships, your identity. It's really shifting you into this next phase of your life. So it's so beautiful to see, knowing what you've been through and knowing where you're
Mhm.
at now, to kind of see the proof in the pudding in the astrology. So,
Love that.
that always makes me happy. So let us know, and everyone who's listening, if they want to be in touch with you, if they want to follow what you're doing, what you're up to, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So my email is my personal name right now. So it's Ellenit Serrano
Okay.
@gmail.com.
Okay.
And on Instagram, I'm b.wellenit.
Okay.
It's my name, WELLENIT,
Okay.
Wellenit. Also, I'm posting a lot on LinkedIn right now. That's
Okay.
kind of my primary platform. And the website is coming soon.
Yay. So I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes so everybody can just click on it.
Love it.
And thank you for making space for our
Mhm.
conversation today, for sharing your story with the world. And I know that it's going to ignite some fires out there.
I
So
love it. Thank you so much, Monique. It's always wonderful. It's wonderful to hear all of the podcasts and all of the stories. And it's always wonderful to just engage and be in communion with you.
thank you, honey. Okay.
All
Thank you,
right.
everybody, for joining us.
Thanks.
Okay.